Yeah, so like everyone has their own definition, and that's why flow is really cool because it otherwise, like in the past, I had to basically create all these triggers in the app to say like, okay, order value over $1,000 and it's high risk, or maybe it's not. Everyone had the rules engine they had to build by hand.
Yeah.
With Flow, I just publish a couple actions, send an ID check the customer's current ID verification status, and then they can build their own conditionals and whatnot. And I have on the blog, there's a bunch of published templates that folks use.
Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of the Liquid Weekly Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Meisterheim, and with me, as always, is Taylor, the color coordinating host page. Taylor, good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Glad we made this happen.
I'm glad to. Taylor, you and I have talked a lot, and I think one of the things that has come across as a common theme in your life is just how much you feel like a fraud. An imposter even.
All the time.
And the constant questioning of, do you even belong here? Do you even know what you're doing, right? Well, and I've tried to assuage you and say, Taylor, no, you're fine. Like, everyone makes these mistakes. It's okay. You'll get there eventually. But today, as you know, we've actually brought in a fraud expert. Dylan Pierce, founder of Verdict Software. And he's going to tell us once and for all which one of us are frauds and help us determine whether we really are imposters or not. So, Dylan, welcome to the show. We are excited about your assessment, and we will accept whatever results you come to with humble hearts. So, thanks for being on Liquid with me.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure to be on.
Yeah. Okay.
You got to do it, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're excited to have you.
Thanks for coming on, Dylan. Appreciate it, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Since this, you have to hit all the other podcasts before us, kind of type thing first. But that's, whatever.
Right
I'm going to try not to be salty about it. I warned him ahead of time before we recorded that. I was going to say something, but, I like Kalen too, so I think that's cool at least.
You just got to get in before it's a race. You just got to get in before the other popular Shopify podcasts.
I know. I'm going to have to start asking people like, hey, did Kalen ask you to come on? And then you have to come on here first. So that's, we're going to start doing that. So we went on a trail run even, and I was like, oh man, this is a great podcast material. And you're like, no, so and then you go on another podcast and you're like, what's happening, man? So, that's okay. We'll get it. I did that trail run for nothing, Carl. So I was just running all over the place, taking me up
we talked about so much I forgot about that. Maybe next time we should just record on the trail, just out of breath. Everyone's just gonna hear us breathless and sweaty. Yeah. That would be fun.
Yeah, I'd love to make that happen.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Carl, you up for it?
I just finished 6 weeks of PT so I can walk again, much less worry about some trail running. So we'll see.
Yeah, there you go.
You hurt your foot or something, or your ankle?
Yeah, I was running.
Oh.
Were you running, or was this from walking on the under the desk treadmill still?
No, well, that exacerbated it. But no, this was I was jogging, and I woke up the next morning and couldn't walk. So, well, I guess that chapter of my life has come to an abrupt close. But you get into your mid-30s like I am, and these kind of things happen.
That's the mid-30s. You literally have a medical reason though to be like, yeah, I can't go running, guys. I'm sorry. That's awesome. Just stick to the recumbent bike. You just sit there and pedal for a little bit, like real easy. Like that's it, man. That's where it's at.
Well,
dude, I feel you though. My knee has been like that too. I had to switch to biking, and that's been great. I love biking now. I was never a big biker before, but ever since my knee injuries from running, it's just kind of like a hard switch.
Yeah. So you ran with an injured knee on a trail run, and you still beat Taylor and had a better time than him.
I'm competitive.
We were talking about breathing hard. Like Dylan was not breathing hard. I was gassed. Like every time we hit a hill, and I know he was just like going slow for me or whatever. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is brutal, man. Like
was this in Cuyahoga?
Well, yeah, and it was really nice. Like we hit the falls up there and stuff, but like where I typically run, it's like relatively flat. I don't have a lot of hills, and so then you find out like how untrained on hills you are when you hit a hill. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. So I need to probably do it more often though because it was so brutal. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not fair. Like I have like a decade more of experience there from like middle school and high school running. It's
Yeah.
it's my backyard basically.
I ran in football when it was a punishment, and that was the only time I was ever running. Was in between plays, and then when it was a punishment, like go run 300s. It's like, oh my gosh, no, I'm gonna die. Call my mom.
Oh, dude, I gotta tell you. So I don't know why Twitter did this, but because I'm following you, all of a sudden I'm getting these Ashland high school football updates on my
You're welcome. You're welcome. My local high school football team, Ashland Arrows, crushing it this year again. So
they must think that we're in the same area. Like, oh, you must like Ashland football too. I'm like, I guess I do now.
You must. Yeah, you're welcome. That's probably I've got probably I'm gonna get a rash of unfollows here lately. So my local team has a mentor program. And so I'm a mentor for one of the players, and he's having a fantastic year. He's a really, really good athlete, really smart kid. Killian O'Brien, number 2. He's awesome. And so I try to share his stuff when I see it, because I guess a lot of coaches use that for recruiting. Like they still use Twitter and X for all that stuff. And so I try to make sure I'm sharing stuff as I see stuff. He doesn't even manage that. It's his dad who's doing it for him, kind of type thing. Because I was like, dude, you guys use Twitter? I thought this was just like an older person thing. He's like, oh no, I don't use Twitter. That's my dad doing it for me. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I thought I felt really cool there for a second that I was on Twitter or X or whatever, and no, it's still just the old guy thing. So all right, cool.
Yeah, we did it ourselves. They have that the Huddle app. What I've heard, because my brother was into football too, and he's younger. And they have a specific social app for sharing highlights and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what world. They use. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Went down the rabbit hole of recruiting profiles and stuff. It's kind of interesting.
So Dylan, have you heard that at some high school football games they serve hot baked potatoes?
Wait, what? Really?
Tell them, Taylor.
It was awesome. I understand other people aren't as jazzed about this as I am, but so you normally get the typical snack stand concessions things or whatever,
tortillas
nachos
with the cheese.
Dogs.
Yeah,
pretzels.
And so I was just super jazzed that I went to one of these games. It was later on in the year, so it was kind of cold here in Ohio, right? And they had at this away game, they were serving baked potatoes, and you could put stuff on it like pulled pork and mac and cheese and stuff. It was awesome.
That's amazing.
And so I was very, very excited about it. I've been talking about this for forever, and our game this year is going to be there. And I was recently told by somebody that they're like, no, that was a one-time thing. They don't do that every game, and I don't think they're going to do it anymore. It's like, no, I've been talking about this for years now. It's very exciting.
That's actually super smart, because you think about it, the scaling of cooking potatoes is super easy. That you're just steaming them or wrapping them in foil. You could do a ton of potatoes at once and just have crock pots of bacon, all the goodies. That's actually really smart.
So now I'm going to be this guy smuggling baked potatoes into high school football games. So at halftime, I can just bust this thing out and just start going to town. So
you're like the Johnny Appleseed of high school football potatoes.
It's gonna be it's gonna be a thing. Mark my words. Origin story right here. Whatever baked potato podcasts are out there.
Maybe you could get Shopify to sponsor it if you did Shopify POS for your point of sale, and then have some banners and say, "Can you just give us?"
So cool.
What's it gonna cost? $500 for some potatoes? I don't know.
Put the Shopify sticker on the tin foil of the baked potato. It's like the seal.
Yes. I'm on the supply shop right now, ordering stickers.
Now I'm hungry.
So it's gonna now you're hungry. You're
hungry for more knowledge about
some
Dylan.
Pretty good stuff lately. So.
Watch me, I'm changing the direction. Dylan.
Oh yeah, we
good
are
job.
totally
Good
off
job.
topic.
How are you? How did you get into this? How did you become this amazing Shopify developer fraud detector that you see before you?
Oh yeah, so I was not a fraud guy. I was a regular software dev at a local startup here in Akron called RVshare, and I came across fraud when I was trying to rent an RV, and every single owner that I was talking to was telling me to book off platform. And for a marketplace like Airbnb, RVshare, what have you, Turo, that is bad for the company because you're essentially spending money on ads, and the owner is taking the commission off platform. You're not getting any of that money. So I thought that was a huge problem. The next hackathon, I wrote an app that would query all the messages and search for keywords that kind of indicated potentially that there were some off-platform commissions happening. Keywords like PayPal, Cash, Direct, that kind of thing. And I met somebody in the sales who saw the same problem, and we worked on it together for a bit and tried to turn around owners that were taking away, we call it revenue leakage. And then that just turned into finding more types of fraud. I became known as like the fraud guy. So there was self-booking fraud where people were taking stolen credit cards and siphoning that through the system. All kinds of things, bad things. And so I wrote systems that detected it and then attempted to triage, verify, sometimes ban, sometimes shadow ban. The escalation of the action to take depends on the severity of the fraud. But in a marketplace, it's crazy because you have multiple parties that are talking to each other. So the opportunities for fraud is much greater than just like a two-party transaction between you and a merchant. When there's a renter and an owner working together on the same system, it's just a lot more flexibility to do bad things. So that was my job for 6 years. Wow. And then 2020, I looked around the Shopify App Store and I didn't see anybody doing verification well. And I knew from my time at RVshare that ID verification and other types of systems like that were crucial. Detection's one thing, but verification's another. So I built the first version of it around 2020, 2021-ish. And then from there, I just have been working on it nights and weekends. And I've just gone full-time last year on it. So it's been a long journey.
So does this book end then with, I saw on your blog you guys had built a tiny house and toted around for a while?
Yeah, that was...
Is that where you...
Everybody wants to hear about the tiny house, man. It's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. That was back in RVshare. That's one of the reasons why I took that job is because back then, like 2015, 2016, remote work was not a term. So I told them, like, hey, I'm going to be in Akron for a year building this tiny house, and after that, I want to go remote. Is that cool? And they were like, yeah, that's great. We're a travel company, so that makes total sense.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was really fun. Spent a year and a half building it. That's a whole story too. Like that was crazy. Built in an Ohio winter, and it was pretty brutal. And then after I was done, I realized that all the weight distribution on the trailer was totally wrong. So I had to put a third axle on it while my wife started her first travel nursing gig in Georgia. Eventually met up with her, and then we traveled around Georgia, Florida, Montana, Seattle, and then eventually came back to Ohio because I'm stuck in Ohio, right, guys?
Yeah. Why go anywhere else?
Stuck here.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. So while I was traveling, I was working at RVshare, and that's when I was building this whole fraud system.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so you've been in the Shopify ecosystem ever since?
Yeah. Shopify since 2020. Early app bridge, pre-managed installs. It was a different beast. Before any extensions. Polaris was out though. Polaris was out, so that was nice. But things were a lot easier in a lot of ways, but also a little bit more complicated now with the functions and the extensions and the 4 different ways you can add front end stuff to a store now. Like it's very, very complex.
So I'm going to ask you a question, Dylan, and this question, your answer is going to determine the tenor of the rest of this podcast interview. I saw an article on your blog. It was about how to take your knowledge of PHP and learn Ruby instead. So what is your tech stack, Dylan, and what is your language of choice these days?
Well, now it's Node and JavaScript.
Oh, okay.
A little bit of Python. I don't touch Ruby anymore. So like in my early days, I was PHP, Laravel since version like 3. And then at RVshare, they were migrating from PHP to Ruby. So I was kind of learning with them. And that's when I wrote that whole like series about learning Ruby from PHP, because I couldn't see anybody writing about like the patterns differences. Like in PHP, you have to do like dependency injection, you have to do all these crazy things so that you can actually write unit tests. In Ruby, it's like super flexible. You can mock anything you want. But in PHP and Java, you can't. You have to do these crazy kind of patterns. And I was wondering like what the differences were. So I wrote like that whole thing way back then. But since then, I picked up JavaScript, the React front-end stuff. When it first came out, I jumped on that early. And then I was like, why use 2 different languages if we have Node? And I've been chasing that efficiency. Maybe it's a myth, but I'm hoping one day it's much more seamless to do front end and back end in the same language. There's still a lot of bike shedding stuff, but AI is making it easier.
For sure. Okay, that's cool. I was just kind of hoping we could nerd out on Ruby and Rails stuff, but it's cool what you're doing. I respect it.
I know a little bit. Cool. I mean, I've did it for years, but I haven't touched it since probably 2020.
All right, I think I'm emotionally done. Taylor, you got any questions? I'm just kidding.
It's like, wow, that's okay. Carl's checking out. So we're, obviously, so you talked about the tech stack and talking about fraud. So I don't know if you want to like talk just in general. I think it's always interesting to hear about like if you've had previous apps and failures. Everyone wants to hear about that, but in general, as far as like if we can talk about like Verdict is like pretty successful app, as far as that goes, you're working on it like really full time. And so do you want to talk a little bit about like what does Verdict do in general? Because we know it like kind of like handles fraud and those sorts of things. But maybe you can talk a little bit about like who it's for. You knew that fraud was a problem, right? Because you have your past experience and you started to gain some expertise. So how did you use that past experience and expertise to figure out how that works for like Shopify merchants specifically?
Right. Yeah. So Real ID is the main app. It provides ID verification that's tightly integrated into the whole order system. It could be before checkout, during checkout, or after checkout. Basically, what Shopify does well is detecting fraud. They have the fraud analysis. It's free. It gives you a basic overview from a machine learning algorithm based on the network of credit card transactions. And there are some limitations to it. Like there's a lot of false positives. Without a deeper look into the customer and the order details, they're just looking at like IP address, street address, looking for mismatching details. But like in the modern e-commerce world, you could be visiting Toronto for editions.dev, buying a gift for your mom for Mother's Day because it's May. And that would set off all kinds of alarm bells because the shipping address is different, the billing address is different, the IP address is not at home. It's not enough detail to say definitively, like, yeah, this is fraud. This is a bad person. So the next step is taking that small subset of orders that are flagged and verifying them and making sure that, yes, this person is saying who they say they are. This isn't a stolen credit card, what have you. It could be also for Shopify has a lot of rentals. Rentals are a high risk business because if someone, takes your asset that you rented them, you're out the asset. You're renting out a camera for $50 a day, and it's $1,000 camera. If it's stolen, you're out that $1,000. So verifying the person adds another layer of security and gives you also what I've found is a deterrent to fraud. So if someone is attempting to pretend like they don't recognize the charge on their credit card, that's called first party fraud or friendly fraud, having the ID of them to match against the credit card details kind of tells them like this is a serious transaction. You're spending hundreds of dollars with us or $1,000 with us. If you file a fraudulent chargeback, we have this evidence, we will dispute it. On top of that, if they still dispute it, we have the evidence to give the bank to say like, yes, this person is the authorized cardholder definitively. Here's a live photo of their ID, of their face, of all the details around the transaction. We know pretty definitively it's you, and we've helped merchants win that way too.
And that's
kind of like
I think just from that basic perspective of because chargebacks are horrible, particularly when you're talking about like volume. Like it's always a problem. Like when you're talking about these plus shops dealing with chargebacks, they're super time consuming. Depending on where they come from, it's like really hard to win a chargeback. Depending on like the card and stuff that they check out with. Some of them are actually good about actually reviewing stuff, and some are very favorable to the merchant in that perspective. So I think that's really interesting. We can I'm gonna backtrack a little bit here because I know you've got more to say about that, but I'm gonna backtrack some because I have my real world example that I was going to ask you about, and I think that's really helpful piece that you talked about. Because like you said, Shopify does have their own fraud analysis, and it's just this idea of maybe there's going to be a chargeback initiated because whomever's checking out may not be the actual owner of the card, right? And so there's a lot of cool stuff you can do in Shopify Flow. They've got like some triggers based on when the fraud analysis comes back. And so it's been a standard for a lot of shops that I work with, but we have had that happen a lot with false positives. So that sounds like a real good differentiator within your app, because that was something recently I've been working on with shops, is changing how our flows work when the fraud analysis comes back, because we were finding instances where like this person has purchased multiple times before us successfully, and all of a sudden like they got a canceled charge because part of our flow was, if it came back as, hey, high risk, just go ahead and flat out cancel it, let them know that it was canceled because of fraud concern. But like obviously we want a way to identify like those good customers, especially like we don't want to offend good customers, if that makes sense. Like, right? Like you don't want to make it harder for them to check out. So good customers will come back and they'll just try to buy again. And they'll accept the fact that it was probably just an error. But so I've been figuring out like these complicated like flows of like, okay, now I'm starting to like tag customers based on the number of, transactions they've had and stuff like this with the metafield, versus like you've already got this figured out as far as how that goes. And it takes definitely a lot more context, like deeper learning into perspective. So I think that's a really good differentiation between people who are trying to figure out what an app can do versus what you can get away with within Shopify. So I don't know if you can talk about that, like to some degree, is that the false positives I've seen happen too, where just like on Twitter and whatever, online, people are like, hey, like, are you seeing just like a really high number of these come back as high risk? Have there been like instances that you've seen with that too, with the fraud analysis tool?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. That's a lot of my customers. It's like fraud. The rate of fraud depends on the industry you're in, and the false positives are trained. I don't think they're trained necessarily per industry. Like, I don't think the under the hood, I strongly believe that this is just Stripe Radar. And Stripe Radar.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, we probably have some inklings as to like where this is coming. They obviously don't have all that documented. They will do like if you're in Shopify and you click on like the risk analysis, it'll like do all the check boxes of, hey, these are the things that we checked or whatever, right? But yeah, like obviously Shopify has a lot of data on that, I'm sure. But yeah, it's probably something just like Stripe Radar, who also obviously has a ton of data on that too.
Yes. Yes.
So
but they don't have like a history of a specific person's chargeback history. So they don't know necessarily like person A has done 12 chargebacks in the past year, for example. So it's just a lot of guesstimating based off of signals of mismatching distances that shouldn't be possible, time to check out, just kind of like surface level things that are fast. And they're also doing so many a day. Like it can't be that grand. It can't be that deep. They're not doing like super deep checking. But it does, like the amount of false positives can come and go because it is a black box. It could be a new model they trained, they release it and they realize, oh, this is a loose fit. We'll roll it back, do another one. Or it could be, like I said, like a specific industry. Like some industries just have a higher chargeback rate. For example, digital gift cards. Those are extremely high risk because they're close to liquid and they're very attractive for fraudsters to monetize stolen credit cards. So their rate of false positives will be much higher than a apparel store selling $30 items, for example.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about that. Not even just like industry specific, but like product specific, how that's problematic. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you come to things that just have high resale value. The higher the resale value, the bigger target for fraud. It's closer to liquid. From the fraudster's perspective, they can file a chargeback, whether they own like say if you are the card holder, you could file a chargeback, resell the good, the merchant's out the good, and you're made whole.
You're just SOL. Well, it's wild. Like we even have that. I'm not sure if you've had to do something like that too, where within the app, but I have flows set up where if someone has initiated chargeback, like we tag those customers because we don't want more orders, because we have people that will do a chargeback and then they'll try to come back a month later and order again. And I think that's wild. They're like, what? Like what's happening here? But if you don't have some way to identify those people, like they can just keep doing it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the early patterns I saw at RVshare. So the fraudsters, email, like identity is disposable for the most part on the internet. You can make a brand new email address. You can even use a VoIP service to make a new phone. So like SMS verification, email verification, they're okay, but they're not great. And even IP address isn't great. You can VPN into different areas pretty easily. So when you tie it to closer to real world data, it's much harder to fake. So once you commit fraud once, okay, make another account, go ahead. But if you try to do another high risk transaction, then we'll catch you. Like we made a big block list of all these IDs that were known of bad actors. And there's some pretty funny pictures I had back then of people, flipping me the bird in like the pictures because they knew it was their last time doing fraud. And it was like that was a very rewarding moment actually. It was like,
that's
oh,
awesome.
Yeah,
they know this works. Like they're mad about it. That's awesome.
Yeah. That was really great.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just like how disposed. I mean, because we've all done that where it's like, oh, we need a longer free trial on something, so we spin up, add another email or something like that or whatever to try to test something out or whatever. That's a really good thought as far as just trying to make it harder for people. And I'm sure with AI too, this is going to get even more complicated. I don't know if y'all saw some of those like Sora videos coming out. How good those look. That's wild, and that's video. So.
Yeah,
sure
that's why I mean digital IDs are going to be so important in the future to prevent. Like, there's going to be two kinds of the internet. There's going to continue to be this anonymous public internet, I think, and then there's going to be another section that's more business. You have to have your digital ID. The UK is doing this right now. Actually, they're rolling out a digital ID as like a business, like a working registration. So every citizen will have a digital ID that's not AI. You can't spoof it with AI. It's cryptographically. I can't even pronounce that. Crypto signed, whatever.
I'm glad that you were the one that had to try to pronounce that.
Cryptographically signed. So it's cryptographically. Thank you.
Look at that. Smart.
I'm also dealing with a sore throat right now.
I'm a Rubyist. Just saying.
Yeah, the purist. I can't handle it. Yeah, so once that, I think that's going to be the ultimate solution to the incoming AI wave of spoofing. It's just going to be, impossible to detect strongly without a strong identification system. But that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, related, but yeah, that's pretty deep as far as how that goes. And I don't know, it's hard even from a social media perspective or just being online perspective in general, because it is so easy to be anonymous or spin up different like identities or whatever, like you said. So trying to figure out a way to like manage that better for e-commerce, for merchants, is definitely something that's very, very helpful. Now, one thing I did want to like point out too as well, like you got one of those cool boards from Shopify, didn't you? Like the skateboard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's really cool.
I need to hang it up back here, but I haven't.
You should have had it like in the background for the call. That would have been cool.
I know. I need to find some time. Man, with kids, it's hard to find time for anything.
Well, all these podcast interviews too. I hear this is the second podcast you've been on.
Second.
I'm still a newbie.
You're busy.
No, I'm picking on Taylor. I don't know if you want to change subjects, Taylor, if you still got fraud stuff you want to push into, but Dylan, I was curious in terms of your Shopify app stuff. You've got how many apps going right now?
Well, I have 2 right now. There's a second one that's more about discounts, military ID discounts, because people are asking about that left and right. So providing an automatic discount for verified nursing, military, first responder personnel. It's a very similar type system, but applying a discount at the end instead of verifying their profile, updating metadata, tagging, that kind of thing.
If you'd be up for talking about it, I would love to hear more about how you approach some of the technical details around deploying and managing multiple apps. For example, what you typically your go-to for hosting would be. I know you said you use Node. Do you have any particular patterns that you use architecturally with the way you structure your code, stuff like that? That'd be fun to talk about.
Yeah, sure. So I have a huge Mono-Repo. Huge. There's many different services that I have to have, like a couple feet. Well, as you know, Node modules, it takes up a whole universe of data. That's really nice for deploying. Throw it onto GitHub. You can use GitHub like workflows to deploy to ECS. I'm an AWS guy. I've been using AWS for a long time. So I have a nice kind of private environment. It scales really well.
So the Mono-Repo has multiple apps in it, or?
Yeah, so you have multiple. It's one GitHub repo with multiple apps in it, and that way you can share packages between them, which is nice. Like in the Node world, like the different package managers allow you to set up in local folders packages that are reusable. So instead of pulling from npm, it'll just pull from your local repositories, like working branch, and then you can just share that code between things. So one example of that is like the Shopify admin extensions. I need to show the ID verification results in the order details page and in the customer details page. But Shopify by default doesn't give you a way to like share code between two different extensions. So I wrote a package that would reuse the same exact like UI, and then I published it against those two different extensions. So it's just kind of like an extension that has like 3 lines of code in it, but it's pulling the package to share that code.
Sure.
That's awesome. Nice.
And so if I'm understanding you correctly, you deploy the Mono-Repo, and then your one hosting instance is serving both apps. It's just resolved at the request time, or do you have separate deployments for the separate apps?
Yeah, so like each app has its own folder and different deployment strategies. So like the military ID one's a completely different app altogether, but for Real ID to function, it requires a lot of different sub apps to make it work. On top of that, I also have a WooCommerce version of this plugin, so that belongs in that repository as well, which has its own like WordPress Docker instance that spins up, and so I can test it and deploy locally, or like develop locally. Yeah, so it's a lot, but it's the most sane way, I think, to manage all these different services that need to talk to each other.
So I'm still a little fuzzy, but so you're saying that with each app you have a separate ECS instance or whatever running, or do you have everything running from the same compute resources and you're just resolving it at request time, if that makes any sense? Like, do you have to monitor multiple?
Oh, you have to monitor multiple things. Yeah, multiple setups. Because some things are the core API, which is real time, like you're saying, and then I have to set up a separate background service worker that is basically like the background job processing, and then you have another one for the like more like data science-y stuff that's internal only. And then you have the website, the marketing website, the documentation website, like all these things are in the same repository and deploying in different places, or maybe not deploying. But the core service is between ECS and Lambda.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Have you migrated over to the new next-gen dev platform, and have any thoughts on it?
I finally got the email, and it deployed just fine. I love how they figured out the UIDs per extension per platform. That's really nice. I wish I could access my dev store from one clicking from the homepage, but that's okay. It just adds an extra click to my day. Like, how many times you open the dev store a day? A lot. And it's kind of hard now to like go to the dev dashboard and then open up the dev store. But these are first world problems, I guess.
Sounds hard.
But yeah, I hope they solve the problem of multi-environments without doing multiple apps. I don't see that yet in the dev dashboard. I assume that's coming eventually. Yeah, I don't see it here.
What do you mean by multi-environments, multiple apps? Are you talking about having like a development and production environment and having to stand up separate apps? What are you talking about?
Exactly. So if you wanted to have dev versus staging versus production, currently you have to make 3 different apps that have 3 different home URLs.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's just a TOML file, but you're talking about like an actual like app record in Shopify.
Correct. So if you wanted to not use your production database on an instance of an app, you'd have to set up a dev store and a dev app to install the development version of your app. Because it's still separated. Like, yes, there's different TOMLs. You can still specify different home URLs, but you still need to, separate based off of environment. And then on top of that, if you have a team, so say if you have another developer on your team, take that 3 times 2, now you have 6 environments you have to manage. It's a lot.
Yeah, I know people recently were complaining too a bit about, and really so, it's a little bit more difficult too even to get access to like dev shops now if you are part of a team. It's not all directly available like it was through the partner dashboard where you could just add people to have access or whatever. You have to actually add them as staff to that dev store specifically, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, interesting. That
at least at the moment, I'm sure that's something that they're working on. But
I'm sure
that because that does I'm sure that does feel
Liam,
like
help us, please, Liam.
Odd thing. Right. Start paying Harshdeep now too. We're like, hey, get this moving. So.
Oh, is he working for Shopify now?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you didn't see that? Yeah, he's working for Shopify. Moved to Toronto, doing the whole thing, man. So he's
you can stay with him.
He's been crushing it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Good for him. I mean, like when I was talking to him, each time I've been to auditions, talking to him, he's like, "Yeah, I've gotten no sleep in the past 48 hours."
Well, I've always said that to him. I was like, I don't know when you sleep, anyways. Like, I feel like that's normal for you because, like, I don't know how he stands to be so productive all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can't.
Yeah, especially on a totally different time zone. That's like, well, it was 11 hours behind. Now he's on the same time zone. That's
now on the same time
heroic
zone.
level,
as Carl likes to refer to as God's time zone. So
it's a joke. Yeah. Ruby was invented in Japan, so really, whatever that time zone is probably God's time zone.
What did this is kind of Ruby specific, but have you been following the Ruby?
Oh no, don't say it.
Yeah,
talking about Ruby drama.
Come on, Dylan.
The Ruby together. I mean,
there's
if you
no
want to talk
drama.
about it, we have to talk about it.
No, it's fine. Yeah, it's unfortunate, isn't it? Anytime you see that sort of stuff happening in a community, it's always kind of one. If you're removed from it, which I would assume you are as well. Like I'm not like super deep in Ruby leadership stuff, so who knows what's going on? But he's not sure how to take those stories and understand and empathize the different sides and figure out what's best overall for everyone. It's just sad, but I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Yeah. It seems to happen to every major open source project eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sad because I think for a long time, I would say it's just still the case. It's just obviously this one instance, but the Ruby community, that's been one of the biggest aspects that people appreciate about Ruby. Is the positive community, the helpfulness that people tend to have. Very much similar to the Shopify dev community in general. I found the same sort of atmosphere. So anytime something like this goes on, it's just sad.
Yeah, I hope it blows over soon.
Yeah. If not, I'll be coming your way. We can talk some Node. Say, hey, Dylan, need some help.
Yeah, Node is the definition of together, not splintered, and 5 different package managers.
Yeah. Oh man. There used to be this guy, and I can't remember his name, but he blogged, and he would just bash on Node all the time. And it was hilarious, like the way he wrote. He was funny. It wasn't just like, I wish I could find those again. They were fun to read.
I think I'm just attracted to those like languages that are like that have like spurs. Like I was PHP for so long, and then I left PHP before 7 was even released, and it got better. And now 8's really, really nice. And I left Ruby for Node before it, I love the JavaScript stuff. I love the Node, but the productivity is not, I will admit, it's not the same as a nice Rails application that's like batteries included, focused on just you building stuff. Yeah. With Node, it's more like a lot of configuration to get things up and running. How much do
you want to roll on your own? I'm going to say AI works like so well with Rails too. So I don't know if you want to like talk about, I know we talked quite a bit about that when we were like on the trail run months ago or what have you. I know you've incorporated a lot more AI kind of type stuff since then too. Because I think when we right around that time, I think I had just discovered plan mode, and I was telling literally everybody I could, like Claude has this plan mode, and it works really, really well. And you're like, what? And so, like I don't know if you want to talk about maybe how that's evolved for you too, about how much you're using that here a little bit, if we can
that
steer away from
life.
The Ruby talk,
Yeah, it's also
yeah, it's huge, especially for solo or small teams. Like, yeah, it feels like you're employing a couple extra people almost to a degree. So yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about like how that's like changed things for you.
Yeah, that was a great tip. I was so skeptical of the productivity gains that people were talking about. That was amazing. Ever since then, I really haven't actually touched cursor all that much at all. I'm just basically, laying out almost like a PM, all these instructions to a junior level engineer. I'm not taking like the big swings like the YouTubers say, like the YouTube, type people are claiming they're doing, but I am basically, it's like I'm treating it like a super fast typewriter, and it's been incredible. I love it. The usage bill is ridiculous, but I think it's worth it if you're a professional.
Yeah. Are you not using like on Anthropic's like max plans or whatever kind of type thing?
I'm pretty sure I am, like Pro or Max, one of the two. But I'm still hitting the usage limit every day. Yeah,
that's the one where dang, I'm not that bad or that good. Maybe that's what I should say. I'm not that good. Yeah, that's my favorite thing to do right now as far as that goes, and I've found it has been helpful to kind of like hop around from different AIs and let it like refine things even further. But I don't know. At a certain point, I feel like I'm probably just spending too much time on the like building out the spec, and I'm like, I don't know. It's hard for me to tell like how much of this do you need for this to be good versus how much I need to have refined this before like it's good and it's going to cut out an extra X amount of work. I think that's the thing, but I do like right now kind of going back and forth with Gemini, and then I have Gemini write to a markdown file, and then I have Claude Code come in and in plan mode and be like, hey, be super critical about this. How can we improve? How can we fix this? And it'll make some good suggestions after that. And then from there, that's when we start like diving into actually doing stuff. That's been very helpful, at least from my perspective on how I'm using it.
Plan mode any different from just asking it to think through this, don't write code, just tell me how you would approach it?
So in general, I think it's just more about like the context of it. Like when you're in a conversation, I think it just cuts down on the hallucinations, at least for me, and I don't know if Dylan's like experienced this too, but like it's more the plan mode is where like you're building out an actual spec and it gives you feedback on like, here's my total understanding, and it'll be, like if you want to like equate it to this, it'll be like 30 to 60 lines in a markdown file or whatever of like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. And the nice thing about that is you can tell when that happens, there are like instances where it's like, no, that's actually wrong. Like, so you can say, no, I'm rejecting this plan, like clarify this part real quick, and then it'll spit the whole thing out with that part clarified. I think the problem with the standard back and forth with just like communicating or chatting with an agent or whatever it is, that I have found at least, is I lose track of that, where it's easier for those hallucinations or those misunderstandings to like slip in, or it doesn't communicate something that it's assuming, kind of, if that makes sense. So I don't know, Dylan, if you've seen something similar to that as far as like how I think it's different or better.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Like having the plan figured out first is just so nice for saving that productivity of back and forth when it is editing. Mm-hmm. You can at least get the high level items correct and the right approach, rather than swing really far. Oh no, now you're just doing back and forth chip shots over the green over and over again. That's what I hate about AI at first. That's why I was so skeptical, because I'm like, I'm spending so much time golfing around what I really want it to do. I can just type it out faster. With the plan mode, you can have much more detail up front, and it does a much better job for whatever reason when it's doing the individual line items on its own. Like it separates the whole project into line items, and then I feel like each line item is its own separate context. That it gave itself a smaller context window to work with, with like the right amount of context to work with.
So you guys going
much more productive.
Are you guys going after pretty big changes with each? Because when I use AI, I use Cursor, and I also have a ChatGPT subscription, so I can use both environments. But anyway, I will piecemeal it a bit, right? So I will figure out, like, if I'm going to change this particular form input or do a small feature, I will talk through that with AI first, and then once we have the plan, then I will set it off to do its thing. But the way you guys are describing it makes it sound like you're doing much larger chunks of work. Is that true, or are you doing this approach for even small changes?
Well, if it's too small, I would just go without planning. If it's just like making a modification to one file, I think that's pretty much my litmus test. If it's one file change, I would just go directly into auto accept edit mode and just have it do it. But if I wanted to look over an entire feature, that, and uses multiple apps or multiple classes, whatever modules, then I would go for plan mode first and say,
Gotcha.
okay, first let's look into this. Sometimes I even do that. Like before I even tell it what I want to do, I say like, tell me how this works. And then in the next prompt, I'll say like, okay, now that you understand how it works, let's make this change. And then it'll have a much better understanding.
Yeah, it depends on like what you're, like how big you're anticipating the changes, or if you're just debugging something, or you're building out, as opposed to like building out a feature, like small changes or what have you kind of type thing. I think that's where it definitely comes into play with when is it just faster, just like drop in and do this yourself, or just using the auto accept edits or doing the chat back and forth, as opposed to like doing something more like plan mode. So I think it just depends on like how big you're anticipating the change goes. But I will say, like, I don't know, like more times than not at this point, like I'm very often reaching for plan mode, like when I'm building stuff just in general.
That's really cool. Do you guys use it much for marketing and that sort of stuff, or just for code?
I'll use it for designing layouts and doing UI changes. I don't trust it for writing because everyone can spot like AI writing a mile away. But it is fantastic. If you give it like a URL of a component or a design that you like, it is pretty good. Especially when you take the effort to make those Claude MD files and put them in strategic spots. It can figure out the context pretty well, and how you like to code and how things should be laid out. And then the other cool thing is when you just pass in the screenshots and say like, this isn't positioned well, check out the x-axis, whatever, and it can understand. It's like amazing.
Yeah, I do like you can drop in screenshots and stuff. From marketing stuff, I mean, not really. I use it for like more internal admin stuff, I would say. Like when we're trying to put together like podcast notes, like really fast, stuff like that, which I guess could be considered marketing. But like, I've got services that help do like the transcript or subtitles and stuff, and but like writing posts and things of that nature, no, like I don't use it for stuff like that. I do know a lot of people are doing this, and this has actually been very helpful for me as well. When I heard people were doing this, I'm like, oh, I'm going to start doing this as well. Is I prompt it to go ahead when I'm doing client services and we're building custom sections or functionality or whatever. It's always been a thing that I've like created documentation for this. And so now just as I'm building stuff, I tell it, hey, create like a markdown file for client docs. And so then I just copy and paste it into over into Basecamp is what I use for project management that gets surfaced for their docs and stuff. And that's been fantastic, just to have it like write the documentation as you're writing code too. It's like, cool, hey, this works now, great, we're going to push this up, go ahead and write the docs for this feature, and it just like, make sure you use this meta field, this gets set on this product, or this meta object, or whatever. Like, it's fantastic for stuff like that. But
I did the same thing with the cursor Claude commands. There's I have a /changelog command that will update the changelog on the public website, and then create the documentation.
What's Claude commands?
Claude commands, you can just like write little prompts that are callable from the CLI.
That's cool.
So you can just reuse. It's really nice for WordPress too, because you have to update the sim version and leave a changelog entry on a text file. So I have a separate Claude command just for that. Just like it just says read the changes in the current Git branch, and then write the changelog entry for the WordPress txt file, and it'll do that.
That's awesome. Because I keep a changelog for shops that I do updates on too. That's really handy. I'm going to use that.
You taught me
I need to
something,
look at
Dylan.
these things.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, he taught me about Claude in the first place. I would not be down this train at all. I was so skeptical. I'm like, I don't believe any of this stuff. You know
what this means, Taylor? This is it. You have passed. Dylan has just asserted you are not a fraud. The whole question we began.
The fraud expert said that I taught him something.
There you go. All right, we've reached peak.
This is perfect. This is that's what it's all about. Validation for me. It's this whole podcast. That's what it is about. It is. I think that is a thing too. Like, so Carl, you mentioned like you're using Cursor and ChatGPT. I do think like the quality from like Claude code was like just that much of a jump, because I thought Cursor was great compared to like GitHub Copilot.
Well, I can use
but then
Claude
since using
Cursor.
that, I've just done that. You can, but it's not the same.
How's it not the same? It's the same LLM.
I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm not.
And there's
I'm
a
not
command
smart
line
enough to tell you.
interface too. And like,
It does not.
Yeah,
It does not
you
work.
should
as
try
well.
out the Cursor CLI. Have you seen that?
Yeah, Taylor.
I have seen the Cursor CLI. I have not tried it yet.
So
Here's
I
my
think that's
thing.
the equivalent of Claude Code is the Cursor CLI.
I use Cursor kind of like Open Router almost, where I can choose whatever model I want to work in. I have found I don't bump into usage limits this way because I can back off on the model if I'm doing something stupid, like I don't need super duper strength for. And then with the CLI piece, if you don't want to be in the editor, you don't have to be. It's just a Claude.
That's gonna be my new auto prompt in the main Claude MD. Use your super strength.
Use your super strength.
You know what I mean? Like, anyway.
We do know what you mean, and we think
No,
it's
yeah.
great.
This episode's getting a little long in the tooth. Is there anything you want to make sure we cover before you go on about changelog stuff?
Oh, are you asking me?
And other views. This is open. This is a democratic podcast. You just can't vote me out as host. That's the only rule.
Yeah, Dylan, is there anything specifically that you want to make sure we cover? I know we covered a lot of things about the app, backstory, and everything, so I think we covered a lot of like good ground here as far as that goes. I think we had talked a little bit beforehand about like interest in how Shopify is like moving towards some improvements as well that you had mentioned might be helpful or beneficial from the fraud perspective moving forward. I don't know if we touched on that.
Oh yeah, you're right. So in the past, the signals, like we were talking about before, they just say like low, medium, or high. Mm-hmm. But the disconnect for merchants has always been, what the heck do I even do with that? That doesn't give you any kind of, like if you guys are follow the Shopify Reddit or the Shopify community forums, there's so many posts saying, I got a medium risk. What do I do? I don't even know. I don't understand. Here's a screenshot. Yeah. So what they're going to change, this is much more human friendly. This is small UI change, but this is big because they haven't made big changes like this in a long time. They're changing from low, medium, high to investigate and cancel as like recommended actions.
Oh, okay. There
you
go. So
what I think this will open up, I hope this, if anybody's Shopify is listening, that will allow apps to hook into the investigate level specifically. So that way we can recommend, okay, you need to investigate. Here's the different methods we recommend for the different level of risk. Like I mentioned before, there's different verification methods, and the amount of investigation you want to do depends on how bad the risk is. It's just a gradient of risk.
So let me ask you, as far as Real ID, do you do anything now with, because Shopify Flow, for instance, has a trigger for like fraud analysis has been complete and like here's the result kind of type thing. Do you have any like flow triggers or are there other like webhooks and stuff that you can subscribe to already that do this for you or whatever? But now you're just talking about having more details.
Yeah, I already have webhook system triggers for when an ID is verified or when it's not, when sending an ID check, which is based off of that trigger, like you mentioned, off of order risk. But like you mentioned before, there's specific cases where merchants want to trust an already known person. Well, the definition of an already known customer is very wide. Like, is it 2 orders in the past month? Is it $500 of
is it
value?
Spend? Is it
yeah. So like everyone has their own definition, and that's why Flow is really cool because otherwise, like in the past, I had to basically create all these triggers in the app to say like, okay, order value over $1,000 and it's high risk, or maybe it's not. Everyone had the rules engine they had to build by hand. Yeah. With Flow, I just publish a couple actions, send an ID check the customer's current ID verification status, and then they can build their own conditionals and whatnot. And I have on the blog, there's a bunch of published templates that folks use. For example, like in Australia, you have to now, there's a specific state in Australia called Queensland, you have to now ID verify kitchen knife purchases. So I have a Shopify Flow that
keep those people at bay, they've got those kitchen knives.
Kitchen knife, camping knives, they just require that. So it'll check to see if the collection, if the order contains a light item from a specific collection, and if the shipping address goes to that specific state, then trigger and the ID check being sent.
Okay.
just that kind of thing. Like it's so custom, and Flow makes that possible.
Right.
So
Yeah.
shout out to
How
Paul.
does that impact too with you with real ideas? Like, so now I'm asking more questions on top of the questions while Carl was trying to transition here. But like, so like markets and stuff, like, cause you had mentioned like specifically like Queensland. So you probably have like some kind of like hook-ins too for like markets, and that's all becoming a brand new thing and problematic with shops. You're able to support that as well? Or are you doing that specifically, like you said, through like more so through templates and Flow? Like, hey, if you need like some specific like market integration or whatever for your quote unquote rules engine, like this is how we'd recommend going about it.
I assume you mean like markets. You mean like B2B, right?
Well, so in general, like Shopify has markets, like Markets Pro, in which case, like you mentioned, you brought up a good point that there's like different kinds of requirements depending on the specific market that you're in with those rules. So is that something like you have to be mindful through the app, or that's just something that people can configure through the app?
Exactly, the latter. Okay, so gotcha. I give all of the basic triggers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Within the app, like check all orders, only check orders that contain specific products, check based on specific risk thresholds that Shopify gives you, that risk analysis. Based on credit card gateway, sometimes you want to not verify PayPal, sometimes you want to verify just credit cards, that kind of thing. But if you want to go more custom than that, then Flow is definitely the way to go.
That's cool. So it's extendable with Flow, which is really nice.
Yeah. But if you were talking about like B2B registration, I integrated with Helium, and Helium has a great B2B registration app. So that could be part of your registration flow for a wholesale customer.
That's cool. We need to talk to them. One of them from coming on too, especially. We'll say, hey, listen, we know you integrate with Dylan's app, and he was just on, so we can get Josiah to come on, or Michael or somebody. Yeah. Like, you know, they're nice guys. I'm sure they'd come on.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Totally.
Very cool.
Yeah. So awesome. It's a lot. I mean, on top of that, people can add it during checkout on the checkout page, or it could be before checkout, which is its own beast because you have to integrate into the theme.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's after customer registration. It's just a lot.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That's the tough part. Anything where you have to integrate with themes, that starts to become a thing. So that's really interesting that we can do it on both sides of things. That's nice.
Yeah. I don't know how you guys. I feel like I'm still learning the themes systems. Like there's.
I do
last
too,
episode
and I do it every day. So like, if it makes you feel better.
Like theme blocks
changing stuff on me.
Yeah. There's so many different ways to do the same thing at the moment. I think this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
Liquid. You know, like what would you say you spend most of your time doing? Is it mostly Liquid?
Yeah, I would say it's majority Liquid, like, because anything that I can do Liquid, I'm doing with Liquid, and then you build the other stuff on top of that. So that's at least if you're a front end dev working in Shopify themes, you can do a ton with HTML, CSS, and Liquid. Like you can just do just about anything, and then JavaScript only gets sprinkled in to add all the extra fun dynamic stuff or what have you. But yeah, that's Liquid's definitely something I'm in much more than not. So, but there are obvious limitations with that because you can do stuff very differently, and then obvious limitations within Liquid too. So, yeah.
Well, I like the one limitation I came across was conditionally. If you don't have any kind of condition of hiding or showing other blocks, other theme blocks, like because as an app developer, you're stuck with theme blocks as the only way to integrate with Liquid easily.
Yep.
And in my case, I want to hide checkout based on verification status. There's no really easy way to show that. And I think that's good. Like it should be drag and drop. This component will always exist. You can't have components within components that hide each other. That'd be kind of cool, actually. I don't know.
Yeah, you could start looking at there's a function checkout and cart validation functions though too. From that, have you looked into that? So you could at least you can disable checkout or whatever if like, hey, we're still waiting on this. Like you need to prompt X, Y, and Z. Like you could do something like that. But yeah, from a Liquid standpoint, that is kind of where you can render things from that perspective of like we'd check the customer if they're logged in and if they have some special status. You can do that, but then anybody that knows Shopify well enough without something like that kind of a function. Like you could still hit checkout. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's possible. It would get rid of most of those users, but maybe the potential bad actors who know the system well enough obviously could get around that without a function for that.
Have you ever read the New York Times sneaker bot article on
What?
that?
No.
So New York Times did like a piece on the used sneaker market and the sneaker snipers, and they had like somebody from Shopify talk about the challenges of this one particular guy that was really, really good at circumventing their whole checkout system. Because they also ran into problems where they were overactive and they were blocking good customers. It's kind of like always the thing with the anti-fraud is like the balance.
With bots, it's always really hard. People are like, oh, we can implement like Cloudflare and this other stuff or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, but the problem with that is it is like it's enough steps when we're trying to figure out how we can remove steps to checkout. That's that adds like so many more barriers. So yeah, that's the tough part of that. I'll have to find this article that you're talking about.
I'll look it up.
But I say if you can find it, send it to me.
Yeah,
we'll include it in the show notes.
I'm always preaching about that on the forums when people are like, I'm just trying to block the bad guys from checking out. I'm like, you really shouldn't do that. That's what led me to shut down my first Shopify app. I didn't agree with the approach of it. Yeah. Like, what you can do to prevent credit card testing, which is the major problem that people have, this low cost, $1 to $5 transactions just to see if a credit card's working or not because they're stolen. Just switch to manual payments and use Shopify Flow. Don't try to block checkout at all. Just only process the transactions that are legit and leave these credit card testers. Don't try to apply fraud rules at the moment someone's trying to convert. That's just bad for the customer. It's bad for you. Move it to after checkout. It gives you time, gives you some breathing room to investigate and come up with a better system than frustrating a good customer.
Yeah, 100%. That's the recommendation for everybody. Like, move to manual payments because you can do that real easy in Flow. Like, do whatever you want after the fraud analysis happens, and then because particularly again, like when you're concerned about volume and everything, you're either stopping a ton of people from checking out easily, or like you're end up paying processing fees for all of the refunds that you get after fraud analysis comes back and you have to cancel the order. So but like the problem is a lot of times too, right? And I'm sure you've ran is like how ERPs and stuff handle orders when they're created. If they're not done in a way that like makes sense, that's usually where you start to get to like, okay, like we have to figure out the extra steps, and then that's when maybe like, oh, hopefully we have an API integration, like we can handle the cancel here or whatever kind of type thing for the reasoning and stuff. And so there's the way that you're talking about is like the one that it's always the go-to, like this is what you should do. At a minimum, this is just the easy solve, and then anything more complicated than that, you have to start really digging into it.
The ERP thing you nailed on the head, because I actually came across this with a customer recently. They spent all this time integrating with us. They designed all these like nice flow, and then they're like, oh no, wait, our ERP just grabs all orders immediately and just starts fulfilling them before we verify. I'm like, can they not? Is there a status filter?
And it's like,
no. And they're like,
this is how it works.
And I'm like, wait, this ERP costs you how much money? And they can't do that?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm baffled. Like it seems like if you pay more for software, it should be more configurable. But that's definitely a big issue with ERP systems. They're not smart about.
That's our idea, guys. We need to spin up some ERP software, and like we need to be the guys for this. We've got the shirts already. Like we're ready to rock. This is it.
So it's just called Red Shirt ERP.
Let's keep it simple.
Aren't the red shirts the ones that always died in Star Trek? Or was that a different color shirt?
Oh no,
I don't know that one.
Okay.
Red shirt. I was thinking more sports terminology, like
there
the
was
red
some
shirt.
because like in the '60s
version, get held back so that way they've got another year of eligibility. And they can come in and like just rock it. That's what I was thinking.
It's like the average Joes of ERP.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
I found an article, Taylor. I sent it to you on the Slack. I couldn't figure out the chat on this thing.
Thank you.
I sent it to both of you guys.
Okay.
It's under chat.
Oh wait, there's a chat.
Yeah.
Here we go. I'll throw it in here.
It's okay.
So you can take a look, Carl.
Speaking of software that costs a lot, Riverside, it's got chat. Taylor, you want to transition to the changelog?
Yes, we sure can. If you're ready, Carl, that's I'm happy
I
to
think
transition.
I'm ready.
If you're ready for your nap, that's.
Gonna eat an orange during a changelog.
So this is one I think that everybody was really excited about. Maybe you guys can even pop in on this a little bit. Everyone's super excited about Admin Intents API in the changelog. That rolled out here really recently, and people were stoked about it. And as a front end dev, I was like, why is this a big thing? The big thing looks like with a single API call, your app can now officially create or modify a wide range of Shopify core resources. That was the big thing. I don't know if anybody. Do you have a real world example, like Dylan, maybe on like why is Admin Intents API like a cool thing? I was like, I don't know, man.
What I'm going to do is I had to hand bake a product and collection selector to basically tag the mark that this product or collection requires ID verification. With Admin Intents, instead you can just open up this native modal that selects a product and you can edit it directly, that kind of thing.
Okay,
so it allows you to
that makes sense.
kind of like skip all this hand building of native UIs.
Nice. Okay, that's really cool. So yeah, so it's a lot of stuff you don't have to roll your own now. Carl's a fan. Nice.
I like
so you got
this
his stamp of
interactive
approval.
changelog. This is nice.
That's So it's one of those things I was like, I know this is a big deal because everyone was talking about it, but I'm like, why is this a big deal? I'm not in this stuff enough to know a real world use case, and so thank you, Dylan, for the real world use case there.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan.
Next up on the changelog, we've got an action required item here. Just so y'all know, there's an upcoming markets pricing support for draft order checkouts. So starting at the end of October here, when the customer updates their shipping address during a draft order checkout, the product prices can change based on the shop's markets config. So that's just something to be aware of if you deal with draft orders and those sorts of things. It's going to have better support for markets. Markets continues to be the bane of my existence, so I'm sure it's everybody else, where merchants accidentally create markets and then we can't find products and all this stuff all randomly or whatever. So we're still learning about products here, but obviously it's becoming more and more of a thing. It's more and more important. So just be aware of that. That is an action required one, so always important to talk about. Admin GraphQL API, you can now duplicate themes easily. So if you do some theme work or different things like that, different actions that you find useful for that, I think that would probably be handy for apps that do require some app config if you don't want to do stuff direct on apps. I'm not sure like really the different use cases for that, but that would be something that I think would probably be helpful to some degree potentially as well. Another really big piece that everybody was talking about, excited about, I'm also excited about because I do actually understand what this means to some degree. Polaris Unified Web Components are now stable. So everybody's pretty jazzed about the web components. We had Brett come on and talk about this when they were first starting to roll this out. We got to get that early sneak peek. And so they've moved over into stable. They've added like 14 additional components since early access. In just specifically for App Home, 36 new components for checkout and customer access, and I didn't even realize, or I guess always forget about point of sale. They actually have like 30 some components for point of sale as well. So the nice thing again about all this being concept of like you can use these wherever they're eligible kind of type thing, and you don't have to use different components in different spaces kind of type thing. So very cool. Definitely check out Polaris components. That's very exciting. The Shopify Dev MCP now supports more APIs, so that's something to be aware of or considerate of. Storefront API, Partner API, Customer Account API, Payment Apps API, Polaris Web Components, and Liquid. So all the stuff that we're using all the time, MCP is supporting that stuff now. The really cool thing, I don't know if y'all seen this too, related to this, if you go to any page on Shopify Dev Docs now and you append .md to the end of it, it gives you the markdown format for that. So I think that this was part of that. Toby had posted about this. I'll have to like link to this where they are trying to promote or push better, obviously like better support for AI, all this other stuff and what have you. I'm trying to think of other really good use cases for this, but it's one of the really cool things as far as like it being like ready rolled out. And who doesn't love markdown format if you're a developer? So that's always fun. And lastly here, there's a ton more in here because we had in October was like changelog day, so there's a ton of stuff in here. I only cherry picked a handful of these. Really good benefit here. Themes now use one industry tag, so Shopify themes before could use multiple industry tags per theme. Now, however, they can only use one. And so this is part of the kind of the rollout with presets also being considered themes and those sorts of things before like themes could have multiple like markets and or niches or whatever kind of type thing. Industries, I guess, is the term we're using. And it wasn't super helpful. It felt like everybody was just kind of like tag every single industry that they could, so that way they had coverage across all industries per preset. Now, since they only have one, it's definitely going to, I'm hoping, lead to better showcasing and picking specific industries, so that way merchants have a better shot at picking the right theme for their shop. So lots more to check in the changelog, but those are some of the biggies.
Thank you, Taylor. The font of knowledge, as always. Our cup floweth over, thanks to your investigation. Well, if you made it this far, you made it to the third half of our show. Prakar, hope your workout's going well. Time for picks of the week. So I'll go first, give Dylan a chance to prepare his, and Taylor, you can round it out. So I, once again, being a man of knowledge and the scholar at heart, I picked a book for my pick of the week. Gone are the days of snack food and home improvement items. I'm a scholarly man. Rocket Dreams by Christian Davenport. It's about the space race, modern day space race. Talks a lot about the inner workings of what's going on at Blue Origin and SpaceX and sort of the more recent history from the first Trump administration around 2016-ish up to present day. So if you're a space nerd, you like learning about those things, curious about the plan to go back to the moon and Mars and how all that has been working, how they're committed. It just came out. I was lucky to score at the library, so check it out. It's Rocket Dreams. Dylan?
That's a good one.
Over to you.
Thanks. I will definitely check that out. So it's an older show, but my wife and I got into the show called Dark, which is a German TV show.
Yeah. Do you like it?
It's on Netflix. Love it. Love it. It's one of my favorite shows. I love mind-bendy ones that have you thinking.
No spoilers.
I'm not gonna say any spoilers.
Okay.
But this is the most complicated thinking show I think I've ever seen. And it really impacts you. It leaves you thinking a lot about how these different characters relate. And it's the same group of characters across 3 seasons. And at the very end, they tie it all together. It's not like an American TV show where they leave you hanging so they can make more money for the next season. It gets canceled. No, this is a proper, European. They close it all up. It's nice and tied up at the end. But I highly recommend it. If you like sci, if you like sci-fi, Dark is pretty awesome.
See, I used to see that pop up on my feed, and I tried to get into it, and I couldn't. And then I read more about it, and I heard what you did. I was like, well, it's probably going to be like Lost, where they're going to set up all this stuff, and then at the end, it's just not going to make any sense. So I didn't follow through, but it sounds like it's a definite endorsement from Dylan. Okay.
Definite endorsement from Dylan.
I like it.
Taylor?
I'm going to check that out. I am going to pick this. So we're all, dads here. We've got kids. This year, my daughter has been walking or riding her bike to school. That's like a mile away. And so just because she wanted to flex some independence, and so we didn't want to get her like a phone or something like that. So we ended up getting her this Garmin watch. So she can send us messages, but it also lets us kind of like keep tabs on her or set different zones. So when she leaves zones and stuff like that, it kind of like pings us and those sorts of things. So it was a nice way to provide some peace of mind. We live in a small town or whatever kind of type thing, and we have a lot of family here. And like I said, it's only like a mile away to her school. But it's been a nice thing to have to help her practice some independence and also take a little bit more responsibility while also giving her mom and I a little peace of mind here. So that's my pick. Pretty handy. Nice to not have to give a kid a cell phone kind of type thing.
Yeah.
Is it called the Bounce? What's it called?
Yes, it's Garmin Bounce. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. My son has actually been asking about getting a watch for Christmas, like a smartwatch.
Yeah. And this is nice.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
it's not a cell phone.
I would like a smart. Yeah, well, and it's nice because it does things like you can set up chore timers for it and those sorts of things as well. There's a lot of little like well thought out things for parents where you can lock it down. Like she can't just add or message other people. Like it's only the people who are parents that message her on the app, or we can add her aunts and uncles and stuff because we have a big family in this area. And so like if someone will need to pick her up today, like they could send her a message and be like, hey, like we're picking you up today just so you know, or whatever kind of type thing. So it's nice for that. And like I said again, like it is just nice to have that peace of mind when you're you're trying to be cool about your kid becoming a little bit more independent, and you want to encourage that as much as possible, but also, you know, it's a big scary world out there, and so it's a good compromise.
Yeah, it's a nice gradual introduction.
Yes.
That watch really needs an app to verify IDs. I wonder if there's someone that could do that.
Yeah, that's the next integration. It's just watches.
That's the next integration.
Could you swipe your driver's license here before you're allowed to take me? Oh, anyway. Well, that's great. Hey, you've done it. You have wasted another perfectly good hour you could have spent using Claude Code. I noticed I didn't say coding. Using Claude Code. But instead you've listened to us talk about things here. So, hope you have a good time. Dylan, thank you so much for joining us. And happy hacking. We'll see you on the next one.
Yep. Thanks, Dylan.
Thanks, guys.